is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today. I am Sean Murphy, joined alongside two special guests. To the right of me is my guy from Clutch Points. He is the Pistons beat writer for Clutch Points, the legend himself, Eric Vincent, aka at I am Eric Vincent. And also to the bottom of me, or below me, there's not a good way to say it that doesn't sound kind of weird. It's my guy Anthony, aka Pistons Talk. Boys, what's going on? Thank you so much for being here.
A horrible start.
I know. I was like, once I got that rolling, I was like, there is not a good way to say this.
No.
And the hole will only get dug deeper the more I keep trying to
just stop talking.
Yeah.
No saving can do with this.
It doesn't help when I have toddlers mentally here with me on the podcast.
You know what you signed up for when you brought us in.
You're right. I knew exactly the things that I could be setting myself up for. So no one else to blame but myself. But gentlemen, it is great to see you both. Basketball is right around the corner. No more of this having to pretend to like football crap. How excited are you both for basketball to be back? And other than the Pistons, because we're going to be talking a lot of Pistons real quick. Outside of the Pistons, what team are you most excited to see or most fascinated to see this upcoming season?
I've got my own agenda with the, like I've kind of talked about it last time we were here with the Hornets. I'm gonna go ahead and rock with them as my my other agenda team. I don't like how people hate on LaMelo all the time. I think they got a lot of young talent on that roster, so I would go ahead and make them my second agenda team this season.
I like it. Anthony, what about you?
The Clippers for all the wrong reasons.
Oh.
Absolutely. We're gonna be talking about them a little bit later for sure too, but good God.
I mean, the unction is going to be fun to watch. I'll just say that.
Unction.
It's gonna be something to behold and something to aspire to, one could say. Yeah. For me, the Houston Rockets were up towards the top of that list until Fred VanVleet unfortunately tore his ACL. So that causes a whole litany of conversations and changes the equation quite a bit for the Western Conference. So, but I mean, that's the NBA. It's how quickly things can change on a flip of a dime. So unfortunate stuff, but we will get right into it. We're going to be talking a lot of Pistons today, going to be talking some Cade Cunningham and how he can get to MVP level. Also some other things to talk about as well. But this is From Half Court, each and every week. Myself and generally Troy, but today a couple special guests talk all things Pistons basketball as a whole. If you like that, be sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content, and make sure you also follow us on social media so you don't miss anything we got going on. You can follow myself at Sean Half Court, but more importantly for today, you can follow Eric at I am Eric Vincent. Check out his writing at Clutch Points, and Eric, remind the people on YouTube where people can find your work as well.
Top Title Detroit. I'm creeping up to 500 subscribers. Doing my best Piston Talk impression with all my uploads. So I think I'm getting close. So tap in with me over there. Top Title Detroit.
There you go. And also you can find Anthony as well at Pistons Talk on all social media platforms. But guys, let's get right into the basketball real quick. Before we do, I do want to send out some love and some good vibes to Troy. He is not here today because he is dealing with some family stuff, had a bit of a family emergency come up. So just want to send love and good vibes to him. Troy, love you, man. And looking forward to having you back on the podcast soon. But with that, guys, let's talk hoops. Enough of all this roll call stuff. Cade Cunningham, pretty good basketball player. Last year at this time, ESPN, they do their top 100 ranking, and we comb it apart and look for what's good and what's not. And we saw this year, Cade Cunningham last year was ranked 67th, which Pistons Twitter and just the NBA fan base as a whole had an absolute field day with. So I think the important question, or the most interesting thing, was going to be where would he end up on the list? And the answer is actually ended up in a pretty solid spot. He entered in at number 12 Now, he was under players such as Jalen Williams mainly. So if you're looking at like players to debate, that's maybe one area. I think one thing that can give us a little bit of grace on that ranking though is that Jalen Williams was just the second or third best player on a championship team and has done a lot to start his career. So I can understand why they have that ranking the way they do. My question is to you guys, first of all, what do you think of the ranking? Do you think that's a fair spot to put Cade Cunningham as of today? And then my follow-up question would be, what do you think takes Cade Cunningham from top 12, top 15, or third team all NBA, if you will, kind of area to MVP conversation? Like, what's the gap between a Cade Cunningham and a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Is it field goal percentage? Is it conditioning? What do you guys think are the main things?
You want to take it first, D?
Yeah, I'll go first. To go with your first question, I'm okay with the ranking. I actually like it a lot. I think 12 is very respectable for Cade after being as low as 67 along names, not even along, let's say directly what it was, below names like KCP, Colby White, Alex Caruso, like all these just blasphemous names that ain't got no business being mentioned with a guy like Cade Cunningham. So, bumping up to 12, I think is very fair for him. I think he should be above Jalen Williams, but like we kind of just talked about, I'm okay with it. If you're mentioning the conversation with guys like Anthony Davis, Evan Mobley, who's breaking out as a young star, and then Jay Will, who had a really great, or J Dub, whatever people want to call him. If like what he's been able to do with his career in last season with the championship run that the Thunder just went on, I'm okay with it. Like, I don't mind as long as it's just not a blasphemous, like ridiculous ranking. I'm not going to mind it. And to kind of go to the second question, I think what Cade needs to find a kind of holding it in on a personal level, I really want to see that 3-point shot be a little bit more consistent. I think if he finds himself in the rhythm that he found himself in the first half of the year, where I think he was shooting above like 35, 36% from three, maybe a little higher, I think we're going to see things open up a lot for the Pistons offense and the accolade conversations for Cade. I also think it's going to have a little bit more team success with it as well. The Pistons are one of the more favored and exciting young teams in the Eastern Conference, but he doesn't have the Jokic pedigree where he can finish, or the Nuggets can finish sixth in the West and still get an MVP nod. The Pistons are going to have to be, I think, at a minimum of 4 or higher, and I think they do got a chance to make that happen, even though I think Cade doesn't work with the best or the highest of talent around him in terms of stars on the roster. I think what he's done and what he's been able to provide with the young core like the Pistons, I think he's going to gain enough respect off what we saw last season, and booming up to next season, I think he should be right in the thick of that MVP conversation with what's available to him.
Yeah, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the list thing first, anytime there's a list, I feel like it can be debated and dissected so many different ways. I wasn't really too mad at the ranking considering he moved up 55 spots. I mean, when's the last time you could say someone has moved up 55 spots in a single season? Like,
pretty good.
That itself is pretty incredible. I saw the discourse across Twitter today with Jalen Williams. Whether or not you want to agree Jalen Williams is better than Cade Cunningham, I think it just depends on your viewpoint of better. If you were to put Cade Cunningham on OKC, like, would they still win a championship? Probably. If Jalen Williams was in Detroit, would he average the same numbers? We really don't know. Didn't have anything with problems with the rankings. I'm happy to see him at number 12. I think he'll possibly be maybe 8, 7 next season. To the second question, Sean, the MVP. I think the MVP thing, for me, it's conditioning. And I know Trajan actually touched on this with you guys in the media room this past summer, is, Cade got used to the playoffs. Now he has to condition his body to play in late May. I think it's the conditioning. And you saw the 3-point shot. It was flat. I mean, we can all agree here. If he made more 3-point shots in the New York Knicks series, Pistons probably win the first round series against the Knicks. He shot 40% from three the first month of the season, but it kind of just fell off. I think it's a stat dependent award, Sean. Like I think you would have to average close to 30, and I think you have to be a 50-win basketball team, especially in Detroit. We know Detroit isn't the sexy big markets like the LAs or the New Yorks. You have to win 50 plus games. You have to, I think, at least be top 4, top 3 for voters to actually come out to LCA and watch Cade Cunningham. You have to get more nationally televised eyes in games for the casual fan to start talking about Cade Cunningham. I thought last season you started to see more people tune into Detroit Pistons games that haven't been tuned in for several years. So I think it's just a stats thing, 26, 9, 24, maybe 10 and a half assists. I think those are the numbers you would have to have. And I think Cade can get those assists with this roster the way it's constructed, because that's just how I feel about him as a basketball player. I feel like, when he has to score, he can. If he wants to get his teammates involved and defer, we saw it last year several times. He would defer to Malik Beasley or Tim Hardaway or the other vets on the roster. So I just think it's just a stats thing, conditioning, and then, just stay healthy.
Yeah, I think you guys make a lot of solid points, and I would tend to agree with Anthony that I think a lot of it starts with conditioning, and then that will take care of a lot of things later. I think if there's anything we saw in that Pistons Knicks series, I think Cade Cunningham and Jalen Brunson were about neck and neck as far as their level of play. I think a lot of us in the Pistons space would gladly take Cade Cunningham over Jalen Brunson as far as like future bet. And I think it's, who's better at that point is kind of up for debate. I think one area though that Jalen Brunson shined, and I think what allowed him to excel in late game situations, and just the thing that's perhaps most impressive about his game and even Shea's game is just their level of conditioning. Just how much they can go at it, like night in, night out, and for 30, 40 plus minute nights. Like Jalen Brunson in particular last year, he was the Knicks offense. Like he had the ball for 16 to 18 seconds of the shot clock for the majority of each possession. And even at the end of the game, he was still hitting big shots, taking big crossovers and making plays. And whereas with Cade Cunningham, like you said, anything like towards the end of the season, his 3-point shot started to get a little bit flat. There would be nights where like the energy would kind of come in bursts. And Cade already took a really big step in conditioning this last season. And it's not to say that his conditioning is bad, because far from it. I think of a lot of young players who have come into the league, I think Cade has been really mature and has been ahead of a lot of his peers in managing his body and caring about conditioning and being mindful of his diet. But I think where Cade takes the next step is, like you said, not just being conditioned for an 82 game season, but being conditioned to play into May and June, because like we've seen enough that this team can compete in the playoffs now, but now it's about winning and advancing in the playoffs. And once you start like talking about like the difference between a first round exit and playing into late May, the difference is those little minute things. It's who's, energy wise able to get through that time of the season, who's peaking at the right time. And I think that's just part of why it was a struggle a little bit for Cade towards the end. And I say a struggle as if he didn't have an awesome playoff series and play really well, all things considered. But that's the gap, in my opinion, between a Cade and a Brunson, an SGA, like those kind of that very upper echelon of guards.
Yeah, and I think we saw to kind of go to that conditioning, like you said, the late game execution, I think, is really where Brunson, I think, got that edge, just because in the fourth quarter when the Knicks needed a bucket, he was the guy that they were able to lean on, whether it was getting his own shot or helping create it for others. He was able to show up and rise and shine. Where Cade, had, I don't think he was like necessarily bad in some quarter in the fourth quarters, but he wasn't playing his best, and it looked very clear that he was tired. Dealing with double teams, Nick sending extra attention his way. Even towards the end of the season, I think even after his injury as well, like you could just see, having to be the guy to lift everything, kind of weighed on him a little bit, and not having a guy like Jaden Ivey to kind of spread around some of that responsibility. So that's where I think Ivey's presence next season is going to be so big, because maybe he doesn't have to be the guy in the first half. Maybe he can just facilitate for a quarter, some possessions here or there. Let Ivy lean on his scoring. Maybe we see a jump from Asar Thompson. Even the thing having a guy like Karis LeVert, who we're going to talk about later, he's somebody that I think takes a lot of that pressure off as well, because he has the ability to not just go get his own shot, but he can help set the table to set up offenses as well. And JB Biggerstaff has familiarity with him being the guy to do that. So I think those pieces are going to do a lot for Cade's conditioning, because he's not hopefully going to have to be the guy to have so much on his plate, even though he's capable of it. We see what it looks like when he has to do that. So that help is going to do a lot for him. And I can't wait to see those guys on the team kind of giving them that assistance.
Yeah. And what makes that like so, and people might be like, well, why are you talking about the other players on the team when MVP is an individual award? But Anthony, I mean, what we see all the time whenever guys are handed, or, like even, Asia Wilson, when they were handed their MVP trophy, a lot of the times they go, this is a team award. This is your guys' award just as much as it's mine. The reality of it is you're not getting the MVP if your team isn't performing at the highest level at the season. That's why, like, one of the things I threw in on here is Cade's MVP case at all teammate dependent. And to Eric's point, like, I think it very much is. In order for him to reach that level, like you bring up, like the Jokic pedigree, I think he has to get a lot higher than 5th in the Eastern Conference, because I think when you talk about pedigree, another reality is the West is viewed with a lot more respect than the East is. It's just not the same when it comes to depth. So in my opinion, for Cade Cunningham to like have a legitimate MVP case, like it or not, I think the Pistons have to finish top 2 or 3 in the East. At least, like and on top of Cade having a stellar season. But that's just the reality of how these conferences are viewed at this point, especially in my opinion. Like maybe like beyond this season, it wouldn't be that strict. But with Tatum's injury, with Halliburton's injury, with some of the optics and the lack of depth in the conference, I think that's going to affect any Eastern Conference player's chances of winning that award, whether we like it or not.
And another thing, just to kind of like with the conditioning thing. Like Cade last season during the Monty year, his season was over by November. So mentally conditioning, you're like, what am I even playing for? This is the first year where he had to just go, okay, I gotta take it up a notch. Jaden Ivey's out. I gotta get us 30 if we even want a chance to win. And I think that's the mindset he had.
Yeah, no question. And like, there was just a different level of urgency this year. And also, like, we heard flat out, like towards the end of that Monty season, like if there was a reason to play, he could have played in a lot of those final games towards the end of the year. There could have been more games on his total, but I definitely think we've seen that conditioning continue to take a step up year by year.
Yeah, real quick, I think another thing, like you talking about him having to be a top 3 seed, I definitely agree with you on that, because in the outlier situations where I think even Russ, when he won MVP, OKC was a 6 seed, but he was averaging a triple-double. And Jokic being the analytic, stat darling for a lot of the voters, that is a big reason why he's been, I mean, not the only reason, but a big reason why voters don't get voter fatigue with him. Like, he's kind of one of the biggest faces of those analytic numbers. And I don't know if Cade is really going to be that. And Detroit isn't really looked at that anyway. They're the grit and grind team. Cade don't mind doing the dirty work, and they don't mind doing the dirty work to get their victories as well anyway. So I think that's going to be a little bit outside of the conversation for him, but it's definitely going to have to be winning as one of those biggest, increases in order for him to be in that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if he's ever going to match at least where SGA was from a points per game standpoint this last year. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to be that much of the head of the snake when it comes to offensively scoring wise. Like he's a guy who likes to distribute the ball, more of a natural playmaker than an SGA type. But if you do go and look at the stats, like comparing SGA at 23 versus Cade at 23, and just looking from like a trajectory standpoint, I don't really think it's like unfair to compare SGA as like a potential like landing point for what Cade could become. Because if you look at so SGA at 23, he played 56 games, averaged 24.5 points, 5.9 assists, 5 rebounds, 45% from the field, 30% from 3. Cade at 23 last year, 70 games played, 26 points per game, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 47% from the field, 36% from 3. He's better in every category and quite considerably. So not to say that definitively means he's going to end up being better than SGA, but if you're looking at the trajectory, he's already, exceedingly better at that age than SGA was. So is it out of the realm of possibility to say that Cade could be at that level when he's 27, when he's 26, 27, 28? I don't think that's out of the possibility at all.
No, not at all. I mean, it's his last day being 23. He'll be 24 tomorrow. So I mean, it's just a perfect. It's just the perfect kind of a comparison you've had. I made this comparison their second year, and I got cooked for it. People say, "Why are you comparing Cade to SGA?" I'm like, you look at the archetype, you look at the way they play. I'm just saying, Cade got that SGA whistle. He averages 30 straight up.
Yeah.
He
does not get a good whistle.
Well, in this case, the reason why I'm comparing him to SGA is we're talking about how to get Cade to MVP level. Well, who was the MVP of the league last year? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's a guy that plays a relatively similar game to Cade. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They wear the same numbers, for Christ's sakes. Like, there's a lot of different parallels to these two teams, and even the style of basketball that the teams play, it's not far off. And by the way, Shai's on a pretty young team himself. In fact, I think that team was younger than the Pistons last year, and they went on to win the championship. So I think the parallels are pretty valid.
Yeah, I think they're spot on. I think even going back to before the draft, where the supposed rumor was that OKC was offering Shai and a pick to get Cade. So their names have kind of been intertwined. But I like that comparison in terms of their archetype, what they're doing in terms of their trajectory. I like it way more than Luka when Cade was coming out. I never liked the Luka comparison. People give Luka a huge pass for being a cone on defense, and I just don't respect that at all. Like, he gets hunted out constantly, and Cade is not a guy that you hunt out defensively. Cade gives all the effort that you could want from your franchise player on that kind of end, and so does SGA, very underrated defender in his own right. I mean, even if you think back to Cade's first game where he, against the Magic, where he had a horrible scoring game, the biggest highlight he had was scrapping for that loose ball and doing the dirty work that got the fans sold that, okay, this is our guy. And I feel like that is something that I think shouldn't be slept on in terms of what his game is. Like, Cade is a guy that doesn't mind playing defense, taking on, the best scorers of the opponent, dropping into the post. We saw him last season defending Kristaps Porzingis when the Celtics were playing at LCA. So I think that deserves a lot of credit for how Cade plays, along with everything else. Obviously, his playmaking, his scoring. He just gives so much that I think the Luka comparison just really wasn't fair to what he can offer. I definitely prefer a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander type of comparison for what he does.
Sean, you remember the comparison Ashton gave him before the draft?
I believe the comparison that Ashton gave was LeBron James.
Yep. It was through Whistle Sports. That. I mean, a lot of people like to compare Cade to Luka because he's a point forward. But I mean, when I look at other point forwards across the league, like, I look at Jason Tatum a lot and Cade Cunningham in terms of the scoring prowess. Like, obviously, Jason Tatum's an all-time great, an NBA champion. But I think if you give Cade a couple more years, I think his bag will be just as deep as Jason Tatum. And he could be, the head of the snake of a championship team in a few years, depending on how Detroit does with these contract extensions, future trades, and if they stay healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, and that's a whole other thing. I think some of the listeners of this podcast deserve a break listening to salary cap talk, because I exhaust salary cap or I exhaust those conversations like no tomorrow. But there's a reason why we talk about it so much, and it's because if there's anything we've seen over the last year, or really this past summer, it's how consequential the salary cap is compared to how it has been. Like, these teams are making very, very drastic decisions that wouldn't be made if there wasn't this salary cap world we live in. So to me, that, like, I know, like, to some people, it's like, I don't want to listen to people talk about math. That's nerd stuff, but it directly affects what you see on the court.
Oh, luckily we don't have to get into it anymore. Pablo Torre got it on lockdown.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's crushing all the numbers. We don't need to do anything. He's doing all the investigative work for us. We good.
Yeah, if you ever wonder, Pablo Torre, he finds out. That guy, he's good at it.
I mean, we don't have to worry about Cade. He got that full max.
That's right. Yeah, we straight. We good over here.
Yeah, that is very true. Now, guys, the rest of the rest of the show, I look at the topics and I definitely recognize that some of these are going to sound rather first takey, but when I have you guys on the show, it just feels right. So with that, the next question I have on here is, who would you rather see in a Pistons uniform? Zion Williamson or Lauri Markkanen? And this topic stems specifically from a couple of things. For one, Lauri Markkanen, that comes from Zach Lowe show. Shout out to the GOAT, Zach Lowe. He was talking about how his personal favorite landing spot for Lauri Markkanen is Detroit. And seeing him play alongside Cade Cunningham was something that he found very interesting. And then the reason why we bring up Zion is because half of the mentions in the Pistons talk social media posts is about how the Pistons should go get Zion Williamson. And Anthony, you and I texted today, and it's like, wow, Zion's really the new Brandon Ingram, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, he really is. That's going to be one of those ones, especially with the obligatory annual look how good of shape Zion's in now posts. I swear it's becoming more of a tradition than Andre Drummond's 3-point shooting videos, you know?
Oh, look at you.
I know. There's a special place in hell for me. I get it. And I actually, in referring to Zion, I put in this quote in my notes from Arrested Development, and it says, "These people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might work for them, but it might work for us." And that's honestly, if you're asking me how I feel about Zion Williamson in 2025, that's it right there. But it might work for us.
That could be the case. To answer your question, who do I rather have? God, this is such a mystery box. I think, and I like that he slimmed down too. I like seeing this picture of media day. It looks like he's, in good shape. Looks like he's excited to play with his new core guys. I think I would take Zion. I think he would be the one I would want. Again, I'm really excited to see what he looks like in shape in terms of his defensive effort. It was already, I'm not gonna say he's the greatest defender or whatnot, but JB's obviously gonna make his guys, commit to that side of the floor. And I feel like it's a better defensive fit and really probably to an extent an offensive fit as well with Zion on the floor compared to a Lauri Markkanen. I think Zion's athleticism, the Pistons, priority of pushing the ball in space and fast break and transition. I think he fits that perfectly. I think the buy-in would be there defensively. I think Cade is enough of a leader. I think the guys around there enough are able to kind of communicate the necessity of that. And I feel like for some reason, Lauri, in terms of like a culture fit, he's a good player, but I don't know if he's the best culture fit for this franchise. Like there is, some allure to his game, being able to shoot. He's a big body guy. Kind of had a dip at the glass, which was kind of weird. I know he only played like 40 some games, but it was still weird to see him only averaging like 6 rebounds a game with the Jazz. So I don't know. I'm not. I was high on it maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a year or two ago, but at this point, if I had to pick between the two, I think it would be Zion. I think that name is going to be mentioned a lot, obviously, with Trajan having the ties back to the Pelicans. I think that's just going to be a discussion for a while. But I think he just fits a little bit better with what they're trying to do in terms of their pace and their youth and the way their athleticism works to their advantage on both sides of the ball.
Sean, this is a really good question because both of these players have ties to different people in the organization. If you start with Lauri Markkanen, he played with JB in Cleveland. He's playing small forward, by the way, which is just like absolutely wild before he really popped off in Utah. But I think the one thing with Lauri that people instantly get attracted to is the stretch four, him being able just to pick and pop with Cade Cunningham, Jalen Durham being more freed up. I get it. I always thought, though, if the Pistons were going to trade for Lauri Markkanen, it would have been before he signed that huge deal. And you also have to remember who the GM is. It's Danny Ainge. I doubt you're getting out of a deal with Lauri Markkanen that's 3 first-round picks and probably Jaden Ivey and some stuff, right? The thing with Zion, And I want to ask you guys this. What does this Detroit Pistons front office just love right now in terms of contracts? What are they they absolutely love?
Flexibility.
They do. If you look at Zion Williamson's contract, he's got non-guarantees for the rest of his deals.
Mm-hmm.
So it just got fully guaranteed the 15th of July.
They could cut him if he stubs his toe a weird way.
There's stuff in his contract that he didn't meet last year where he's not going to get as much money.
Right.
If I know this front office, like I pretend I know this front office, I don't really know this front office. But if I had to make an assumption, I know I just contradicted myself like a mofo. If I had to guess, it's probably Zion. And it's just because he's just such a unicorn, being able to play power forward, run the ball up the court, being a lob threat, setting up DHOs with Cade. Like I think if he stayed healthy, it just makes so much sense. When he's healthy, he's one of the top 15 players in basketball, in my opinion. Like there's just no stopping him. But it's just a health thing. I think it's a big risk, but the risk with trading for him, you could cut him if it doesn't work, but I still think the asking price from Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver is going to be pretty damn high, and they probably asked for Isaiah Stewart, if I'm being honest. Like, they would probably want beef stew. Troy would probably want some of his guys that he drafted in Detroit back, and the conversation you have is like how much you're willing to give up. Me personally, it'd be Zion, but I'd be really hesitant on giving up a defensive piece like an Asar or an Isaiah Stewart in any kind of deal.
Isaiah Stewart and Marcus Sasser for Zion Williamson and a New Orleans unprotected first-round pick. Who says no? No, I'm kidding. I'm like, hey, New Orleans, let's trade another one. No, I mean, I just pulled this up out of curiosity, and I do got to give Zion Williamson credit here, because if you do look at the before and after, it's pretty significant. Like the weight loss.
Look at that.
Like that is nuts.
Zion.
Yeah. Zempic Zion coming for the league this year. It's gonna be real. But
Zempic Zion is hilarious.
Oh my gosh. No, but I mean, yeah, but I mean, in all seriousness, happy to see him being healthy, happy to see him looking good. To me, if I'm in Trajan Langdon's seat, I know I'm the minority here. I would go Lauri Markkanen between the two, because if you are going to be paying someone that type of salary, I want to reliably know that they're going to be in the lineup on a night-to-night basis. And that, like, in this modern NBA salary cap, health is just far more of a risk that I'm not as willing to take. And if you're to look at some of the game logs for Lauri Markkanen, like, yes, he only played 47 and 55 games like the last 2 years, but he was shut down very early due to tanking, like for both of those seasons, really. And so it's one of those guys where it feels like I wonder how much more engaged he would look if he was in a situation like alongside another star caliber player, to be able to kind of like take his game to another level. And Zion, like I understand the argument, because it does, like, listening to him talk and like just looking at things, it's like, you know what, man, it feels like one of those relationships that you can't, like, it's not good for you, but it's like, he's been going to meetings, he looks really good, he's been taking care of himself, he lost weight. With Zion, it's like he's lost weight, he's he understands the importance of feeling good. He's talking about being a leader and all this stuff. And then it's like, gosh dang it, now I'm drinking the Kool-Aid again. But the reality of it is like like you said, it's like it's the big if with Zion, and all we've seen with the Pelicans record over the last few years is things going in a downwards direction. And so if I were a general manager, I would have a very hard time putting significant resources into Zion Williamson and feeling comfortable that I'd have my job in a year.
Can I play devil's advocate for a minute?
Do it.
Dyson Daniels. Remember, he was a draft pick by Trajan Langdon in New Orleans. He said, once I left New Orleans, all the injuries stopped.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That is a quote that came out.
I think New Orleans is just a cursed franchise. I really do. I think if Zion Williamson was in a situation where he could thrive and they have a, just an above average medical staff, I think he would stay healthy. You saw him last media day, man. He looked like he was at Mardi Gras every damn day, partying, having a good time. I've never seen him with a general manager. I didn't see him with David Griffin like he's been with Joe Dumars. He's been at Joe Dumars' hip all damn summer. Yeah. I think he really respects Joe Dumars, what he's done on the court, what he's done in the front office. I'll be really interested to see what does happen with him. But I mean, only reason why I did pick Zion, Sean, is just because just the ceiling and the X factor that he is. I think Lauri would make a lot of sense stylistically, and I'm glad you brought up health. Lauri has been a healthy player. It's just Utah is doing their best to get, first overall picks, but they're getting Detroited right now. They're getting fifth. So, I mean, I don't hate the Lauri pick, but I think New Orleans is just a cursed franchise. I mean, every time a player leaves, they get injured. Like DeJounte Murray cannot stay healthy.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid. DeJounte Murray's life unfortunately fell apart the second he got to New Orleans. Some of the stuff, if you read on the season he had last year, just personally and professionally, like prayers to DeJounte Murray, man, for real. Like just a really unfortunate situation. But Eric, what if I were to bring up the potential that like the floor spacing proponent that Lauri Markkanen brings? Now you could argue that Zion brings vertical spacing, whereas Lauri Markkanen brings, like spacing from a shooting component. Do you think that like Zion's athleticism would make him a better pick and roll partner with a Cade Cunningham, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest assets of his game, being a 7-footer that can, knock down the long ball, especially in a position where we still don't know what's going on with Malik Beasley, and they're still going to have to replenish some of the shooting that may or may not come back at this point. So I do think that would help in terms of spacing. Again, I like Tobias Harris, but I think at a certain point, I think they're going to find a way to maybe bring him back again. I don't know if they're going to like let him go off somewhere else. I think he's bought a lot of respect and cachet within this franchise. Even the off-court stuff that he's done, with his new, business that he's done. I feel like I like Tobias a lot, but I don't know if they want to rely on him playing 30 plus minutes, for the next several years with this team. And I think they could look to, find another stretch for the foreseeable future. But I don't know. I feel like I like the vertical attacking and the pick and roll aspect between Cade and Zion more than I like it with Lauri and Cade. I feel like looking at Zion's career, he hasn't had really a whole lot of great point guards to play with while he's been with New Orleans. And I feel like a guy like Cade, again, with that pick and roll dynamic, even with Ivy, I feel like, or there's a lot of ball handlers with this team, a lot of guys that are very passive, a lot of unselfish players. And I think that would really take a lot of pressure off of Zion, who's been in positions where he's had to be the main initiator in their half court sets. I think if he would be able to roam free and not have to do too much, I don't think he would have to come in with the expectations of being like a 25-10 guy. I think if he were able to put up just, like comparable numbers of, I don't know, maybe like maybe like 19-8. Like I just don't see a place where he has to be, putting up just these superstar numbers to justify this kind of move. I think just the energy that he would bring, the energy on defense, the vertical attacking threat, above the rim. I feel like it just seems a little bit more potent for what the Pistons need for a guy like Zion than it would be for somebody like Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah. Can I put on my tinfoil hat for a quick second?
I'm going to say Kawhi Leonard.
Go for it.
Well, no. So, Anthony, I love the point that you bring up earlier about how JB Bickerstaff had Lauri Markkanen and Trajan had Zion Williamson. The question that keeps going back in my head is I wonder which of the two would fight for their respective player that they've had more. I wonder if Trajan would fight to get Zion in Detroit or if JB would fight to get Lauri in Detroit. And this is where the tinfoil hat piece comes in. Because let's do a little logic game here, okay? Trajan Langdon came to Detroit last summer, became the president of basketball operations. He was very well liked in New Orleans to the point where when David Griffin was offered the job, Trajan was the runner-up, and they went and offered him the GM job because they liked him that much. If David Griffin got fired a year after Trajan took over the Pistons, do you think Trajan knew that job probably could have been his within a year or two if he wanted it?
Probably not.
Because you don't think he would have known that David Griffin was in trouble?
I think anytime you talk to an owner at the end of the year, you guys have meetings, but I think you have to add the context of the injuries that they had. Like if they, let's say hypothetically they're a playing team, Griffith's probably still there, but what they did this year, man, like they were so injured. I've never seen a team with such a high under over. I think they were like 40-ish last year, and like I don't even think they hit 30. Like it was terrible last season for them. But I don't know. For me personally, he's probably still there if they have a healthy season and they made the playoffs and they sold tickets, because their owner only cares about making money.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints ownership group are the ones who own the Pelicans now, and they really bought the team because they felt bad for the people of New Orleans that they could potentially lose the team. And I mean, based off things are going, who knows? They might still lose the team at some point anyway. But definitely a fascinating situation. I do hope for the best for Zion. I don't come out and say all these negative things because I have a vendetta against him. If anything, it's just been disappointing what he's been in his career thus far versus what we know he can be. And I think that's where a lot of that really stems from. And so if he does indeed take those steps, I would agree with you guys of where, like if the upside hits, it's Zion and this isn't even a conversation. If we were having this conversation in 2019 and like if people saw this, like in the future from 2019, they would go, what the hell are these guys even saying? But it's a valid question. And that's really why. So I thought it was a really interesting conversation, and I'm glad I was right. So
next, can I say one thing before we move on?
Of course.
I honestly think the media pushed way too hard for Zion and John Morant. Like they have just not met expectations. I don't know if you guys remember the conversations that the media was just pushing the narratives. Like they were going to take over. They got next, move over LeBron. Like they put way too much pressure on these kids coming out of the draft. Like I saw a Cooper Flag like ranked above Cade in a certain ranking. He was like already ranked 6th and Cade was like ranked 10th. And I was like, bro, like let's pump the brakes a little bit. Like, damn, like you're putting so much expectations on these young first overall, second overall picks, and they haven't even sniffed real NBA minutes yet.
Yeah, I
totally agree.
To me, I'm not sure if you agree with this or not, Anthony. Feels very akin to the Derrick Rose, Michael Beasley draft, where those guys were sold to be like the next 2 future stars. We do it every draft. We always like when, especially whenever it's like these like special classes where there's like the multiple talented players at the top, we like hype them up as the future of the league. I'm trying to think of some other ones we've seen. Obviously, the other big one in my childhood was Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. Was a really big one. There was, it's very rare when those classes come along. I mean, LeBron, Melo, like class was seen obviously pretty high, but I mean, to your point though, like the expectations that were set for both those guys coming right out the gates was a little too hot, especially for like, for Zion, it's a little understandable because he had that season at Duke, that was pretty insane. Ja was really like off of some social media highlights in some lower Murray State competition. No disrespect to that school, but not quite Duke, North Carolina.
No, that's just it's wild what the media does to these kids sometimes. They gotta let them grow a little bit before they're hyping them up like that.
I know.
Yeah, they tried doing it with. No, I was gonna say they tried doing it with Cade and Jalen Green. I mean, Cade, obviously he's held up his end of the bargain, and now we see Jalen Green, looking awkward in Phoenix because he couldn't cut the mustard in Houston. So I remember even arguing with people about that. Like people were, saying, like I would say that Cade, I think, was the more polished prospect. People were saying since such and such, and whatever. But I was arguing that back and forth between him and Zion. And Zion had a lot of hype, which was well deserved. He was super fun to watch at Duke, but he wasn't the most polished all around player when watching his game. The excitement came from his dunking, obviously the games they played with Duke and their exciting atmosphere, but that was really the majority of what he did. He had other things that were exciting, but Cade came in as the more well-rounded player, and I think it kind of got glossed over for Zion because people were so excited to see a guy built like him, play like him, and think that it could translate to one of the faces of the league. I don't know. I think that ship is kind of sailed at this point, but he's still a fantastic player, and he does still have value if in the right situation. I just don't think it's in New Orleans at this point anymore.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hope for the best for Joe Dumars and that he can, make that a positive situation. Just based off what we've seen thus far, I don't know if I would say I'm optimistic. I don't know if that's the word that would come to mind. But
free Trey Murphy. Excuse me. Sorry.
True. I mean, and you guys are right. It's definitely a shame, like what we do in like what they do in sports media, pitting two guys like up against each other, for the sake of hot takes. And that's why my next topic is who's under more pressure this upcoming season for the Pistons, Caris LeVert or Duncan Robinson?
What a segue. What a segue. Perfectly done by you.
They couldn't have been more perfect.
I was like, how can I be hypocritical as all hell right now? No, but in all seriousness, Caris LeVert and Duncan Robinson, both coming into new situations, both being Caris, he's on the third team in the last year now, and Duncan Robinson kind of finally being shipped out of Miami, being moved on, kind of having an inconsistent role in his time with the Heat. I would say Cleveland, it didn't necessarily work out the greatest for Caris LeVert, just might not have been the best overall fit. And both of those guys are coming into Detroit, not necessarily being at the top of their target, especially with some of the Malik Beasley stuff that happened throughout the offseason. So I'm curious, just from your guys' perspective, who do you think's more under more pressure to perform this season? Do you think it's Caris LeVert or do you think it's Duncan Robinson?
I say it's easily Duncan Robinson. I think easily it's Duncan Robinson. I think based on the lofty expectations that we saw with how Malik Beasley played, as the sniper go-to for the Pistons, he's now kind of stepping in as it's unfair to say that he's the guy to replace and replay what he did, because I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to have to be a committee that kind of replaces what Beasley did. But the big expectation is for Duncan Robinson to be that knockdown option that Cade and these passers need. His contract also isn't really solidified to where they're at a point where they believe in him for the 3 years that he was signed for. So when you look at, to me, Caris LeVert, he talked about it to the media too. He said, JB helped open me up as a defender. He's also really good as a passer. And we all know that he can go get his own shot too. So he offers more than just being a three-point shooter, which you obviously are going to want for him to provide as well. Duncan's main job is being a shooter for this team. And if he's not able to do that in a situation where, again, kind of like I talked about with Zion, Duncan never really had a great, passing point guard when he was in Miami, and it kind of tipped to some of his minutes as well, along with being a horrible defender to go along with it as well. So if he's not giving you, a sizable amount of, production in terms of his shooting and scoring, he can be unplayable at a certain point. So I think it's easily Duncan Robinson that's got to make this play.
Yeah, I mean, when Duncan's not been hitting shots, that's when he hasn't been making the rotation in Miami. It was kind of as simple as that. But Anthony, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I think it's close. I could understand if someone said Caris, given the way the organization had to pivot on from Malik Beasley. Felt like a lot of people here locally were locked in with Malik Beasley. I was one of those people included before the investigation dropped. But I'm going to go Duncan for the same reasons Eric brought up. It's contractable. He only has a 1 year fully guaranteed deal. The rest are non-guaranteed. So he's basically playing for the remainder of the 2 years of his contract to stay not only with the Detroit Pistons or, audition for a new job, which I think he would get picked up because he's a good shooter. Shooting is just something in the NBA that teams need. But I think it's Duncan Robinson, one, just for the contract. Two, like, people are labeling him as the Malik Beasley replacement. Right. And that comes with expectations and pressure, in my opinion. And if you're not hitting at least 3 to 4 a night, you're going to have a lot of fans on your ass. You guys will probably be in the media room saying, hey, Duncan, you've been cold lately. Like, everything okay? Like, stuff like that. Like, I think he has a lot of pressure on him because he's playing for future contracts. I think LeVert, he's going to have different expectations and different pressure on him. One, because he's played for JB Bickerstaff, and there's no learning curve there. He already knows what JB wants out of him and what he expects out of him. The other thing is a lot of people are labeling him as the backup point guard, and he's making comparable money to Dennis Schroeder, who we just saw killed it in Germany this year. And he's more of a shooting guard, but he's going to be playing a bulk of his minutes at backup point guard. And, if it doesn't really look good and, the fit kind of looks wonky and questionable, I think there could be, expectations and, the fans could be a little bit, agitated and upset over it.
Yeah, I think Duncan as an NBA player, for all the reasons that you guys laid out from a contractual standpoint, is probably under more pressure because not only is this pressure for his future with the organization, it's pressure for what's his long-term outlook in the league. Because as he starts to get up there in age, if the 3-point shooting isn't continue to be productive at this level or at the level that we've seen in the past, he's going to have a harder time making a roster, especially at that $16 million a year mark. And so the fact that it's very much partially guaranteed, beyond this year, there definitely is some pressure there. The reason why I might lean towards a Caris LeVert in this situation, or, play devil's advocate in this situation, I think some of the other reasons you laid out as well, with not only is Caris LeVert going to be replacing some of the output of Malik Beasley, who for the majority of the season, not only was he our top scoring option in our second unit, for a lot of the season, he was our second unit scoring.
Yeah.
With Caris LeVert, he's replacing a lot of that, but he's also replacing some of the responsibilities of Dennis Schroeder with the playmaking and ball handling and setting up the offense. And so, for all intents and purposes, Caris LeVert is probably the team's third or fourth option beyond like a Cade and Jaden Ivey. Like he's not far off down that pecking order. When he comes in the game, he's going to be a significant part of what the offense has ran through. Now, anytime you're replacing one of the greatest 3-point shooters in the history of the league, which that was the level of shooting Malik Beasley had last year. Like, let's not, like, we don't have to make any qualms about it. That's not hyperbole. Like, he had that good of a shooting season last year. It's going to be hard to replicate that, even if Malik came back and was on that contract. The question that I'd be talking about is, can he replicate that? Because it's hard. Even Steph can't necessarily replicate that volume year in, year out. But now for Duncan coming in and being kind of that last second acquisition, and yeah, you're going to probably need more out of your other guys as well. It's going to be a by committee thing anytime you're replacing that type of player. But the Pistons are going to be in trouble if they can't get someone who can at least get 2/3 of Beasley's production from last year from 3.
They also have, I don't want to say his replacement, but they have somebody that they're hoping can be an intricate piece, in the near future, in Chaz Lanier as well. So, Duncan doesn't really have a whole lot of wiggle room in terms of like, oh, I'm ramping up, I'm getting ready. Like the Pistons kind of need him right away to kind of step in and be productive from beyond the arc. I mean, losing Beasley's huge. Tim Hardaway Jr., who kind of gets slept on in these kind of conversations a lot, he definitely played a big part in a lot of big games. Like I keep going back to the Miami game where the Pistons were down late in the fourth, and then he just comes down on a heater and 3 straight triples to put the Pistons back on top. So they had a lot of great, production out of those two guys. And yeah, Duncan is the number one guy. Again, you can get some different things out of Karras to where you're not going to look, even if he does have like a 0 for, night from 3, like so he goes 0 for 5, but he's playing good defense. He's fitting that role as a playmaker. Get into the hoop, get into the free throw line, which we know he's capable of. That'll kind of offset a lot of the expectations that we may have from him as a 3-point shooter. But yeah, again, Duncan's main priority is being that guy. And if he's not living up to the bill, there can be an opportunity where they can call Chaz up and say, hey, we're not really seeing a whole lot with this right here. Here's your opportunity. What are you going to do? So yeah, it's a lot of eyes on Duncan Robinson to kind of step in and be productive with this team.
Yeah. And just for perspective, this last year, Duncan Robinson made 193s, attempted 483. Malik Beasley, for comparison, he made a total of 319 threes and shot 766. Like,
that's unbelievable.
Like just to give a perspective of the volume and of the efficiency. And he played like 3 minutes a game more. So like that adds up over time, but like it's not like there was a significant difference in minutes. Like that's the level of production Malik Beasley had last year. And whether or not Malik Beasley's back in Detroit, that still remains to be seen. This could all potentially be a moot point if he's back, and it could potentially be a bonus that you have a Duncan Robinson in addition to a Malik. But I think with the investigations and, with how uncertain it is, I think it's hard to bank on a Malik Beasley being back on the roster by the beginning of the season, let alone by All-Star break. You don't know.
Right. Sean, could I add something to the 3-point conversation while I was looking it up?
After review, Anthony, I'll allow it.
Okay. So Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley combined for 15 3-point attempts a game. I don't know if Duncan Robinson and Caris LeVert are going to average that together this season.
I would hope not.
No.
But that accounted for 40% of our 3-pointers between those two.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a huge bulk of threes.
By the way, I like we're talking a lot about the loss of Malik Beasley. I think the loss of Tim Hardaway is something that shouldn't be underestimated either. Like I think for the role that Tim had on this team last year, for for how he was perceived at the beginning of the year, I think he came in, and I actually thought Tim Hardaway was awesome in a Pistons uniform last year. Like, was he consistent every single game? Not really. Like, it was a coin flip sometimes on what you were getting from like a scoring standpoint. But let me tell you, man, Tim Hardaway Jr. had the LCA as loud as anybody in the playoffs last year. When he got it going, he had that building going.
Yeah, I mean, after he got poked in the eye, he couldn't miss.
Tough dude, man, and and humble. Really cares about his craft. Just want to see him succeed in Denver. Go ahead, Eric.
That's a big part of it, though, because kind of like what we're talking about now with these signings. Let's be all the way 100. Like when Tobias, Malik, and Tim Hardaway were brought in, it wasn't a ton of excitement from the fan base. It was like, all right, well,
not at all.
We'll see what happens. Maybe and then they all three, I think, vastly not want to say overachieved, but they exceeded in their expectations. And now coming into this season, it's kind of the exact same things. Like, all right, we're not. Maybe fans aren't super excited about Duncan Robinson or super excited about Karras, but we're hoping that you can kind of give us that same feel that we saw with these last three. I think, again, Tobias did his job, played the best defense of his career, did a really good job as a, versatile scorer. We just talked about the shooting between Beasley and Tim Hardaway. Those kind of same expectations are now being put on these guys, even though they're not as high. They're still hoping like, hey, okay, fine. You may not be an all-star, but you got to give us something to put us back in the position we were just in. The Pistons aren't looking to be a play-in team. If they got to drop back and finish in the 7th seed or like outside of the top 5, top 6 or whatever, that's going to be I'm going to say a big blow, but it is going to be a big deal in terms of where their roster is. So like, yeah, they got a lot of anticipation and expectation just based on what we saw from the last 3 veterans that were brought in. That's not something to sleep on at all.
Yeah, no question. I remember going into last offseason, or going into the offseason, the question was, how many of those guys were they going to be able to keep? I don't think any of us expected the answer to be none of them. In regards to Schroeder, Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr. Now, I definitely don't think any of us would have been able to guess the reasons why we wouldn't have some of those guys in Detroit. But, unfortunately, this is just the reality of the league. And all things considered, contingency plans wise, I think this is probably as good of a contingency plan as you can have in regards to guys you can bring in, especially when you consider the lack of significant assets given. The only player we traded away was Simone Fontecchio, who more than likely wasn't going to be back in a Pistons uniform anyway next season. So it's not something where this is like a significant significant downgrade, but there is pressure on both of them to come in and perform to at least maintain what the Pistons did last season, let alone take another jump.
Right.
So with that, got a couple more questions before we wrap up. So semi rapid fire here, but the next question, another little one versus the other question. More likely to play on the Pistons roster next season, Bobby Klintman or Chaz Lanier? Now, Eric, you brought up that Chaz Lanier was someone that was drafted by Trajan, potentially as like distant future Malik Beasley insurance. We didn't think it would be right away. And, he's someone who was drafted early in the second round, someone, who with his 3-point acumen, and Bobby Klintman with his athleticism, with his length and versatility and defensive ability. There's obviously a lot of reasons why Trajan drafted him as well. And so this isn't like a Troy versus Trajan guy. These are both Trajan guys. So I think there's legitimate reason to say either could play in the lineup this year. I don't necessarily expect either of them to crack the rotation, especially at the beginning of the year. But I'm curious who you guys think would be more likely to crack the rotation this season.
That's a really good question. I'm gonna actually go with Bobby Klintman on this one, I think, because I've seen a lot of projection, and maybe this could be a discussion in itself. There's been a lot of conversations about, obviously we know what the starting five is projected to be. Tobias as the 4. Every time I see Ron Holland mentioned as the backup stretch 4, I kind of shake. Like, I don't like that idea at all. I don't think that's his position. I don't think he's really in a position to play as a stretch 4 yet. So I just get a little kind of quivery when I see his name in those depth chart images. So for me, if they were to lean on one of those two guys to kind of fill that last role against the minutes, I think it would be Bobby. I think just based on the fact that, granted, didn't have the best summer league, but from what we do know about him, again, very versatile player, very talented young man, and he gives you a lot on the defensive end, which is, again, priority number 1 for JB Bickerstaff. While, again, his passing may not translate right away with, the main lineups, if his shooting isn't there, his scoring is not there right away, I think you'll be able to, at the very least, lean on his ability to play defense and kind of just add an extra body and some length on the glass. And I think that's going to be a big deal for them, when they're playing against teams length and a lot of size. Again, I just think Ron is just more naturally suited as a 3 or maybe even a 2. I just don't really see him as a 4, even though that position is kind of evolved at this point up in 2025. I still just don't think that's a position. Again, he may prove me wrong. I just don't really think that's the best position suited for him. So I think they would probably lean on a guy like Bobby if they needed to, break the glass and bring in somebody like him. Chaz, I think, has a little bit of time. I think we're going to see him in the G League a lot. And again, I feel like, that shooting is going to be there. That's what they want, but he's going to have to commit to defense, which is an area that he kind of showed he's going to need some improvements on during the summer league. So for me, my guess would be Bobby between those two.
Anthony?
This is a good question because both of these guys were very underwhelming to me in the summer league. They both showed me that they need a lot of development still, like a lot of G League time. But considering what Eric brought up with the lack thereof of a backup power forward, I've seen people put Ron in at backup power forward. I agree with you, Eric. I think Ron is more suited as a 2-3 more than a 3-4.
Yeah.
I think Bobby might get more playing time just because he's a 6'11" power forward, and the Pistons never addressed a backup for this offseason.
Right.
I thought they would. Once Trey Lyles went overseas, I waved the white flag. I'm like, all right, Trajan's just going to wait till the trade deadline and some disgruntled power forward isn't playing, and we're all hyped like we were with Dennis Schroeder. We're probably just going to stagger Asar at small forward and power forward. We're going to stagger Jaden Ivey and Asar, and they're going to be gassed by like all-star break. That's probably what's going to happen. But it's a circle back. It's probably going to be Bobby Klitman. And I'm rooting for Bobby. I really hope he has a good training camp. I really hope he has a good preseason, because outside of the Miami Heat Summer League game, I was really disappointed coming out of Summer League. The shot wasn't falling. I felt like he was really hesitant attacking the rim. Seemed like it was just a confidence issue. There were some situations where he was going up strong, get to the free throw line, but there's other situations where he was just so passive to the point it's just like, man, like, you're bigger, you're stronger than these guys. You put over 10 pounds of muscle this offseason. So I have more expectations for Bobby than I would Chaz. I think if you look at the shooting guard depth on this team, Chaz is like what, the 4th-string shooting guard right now? Like behind Marcus Sasser, I would like to assume. I don't really know what to expect out of Chaz Lanier. There was some things in the Summer League I liked, but, fundamentally, I think there's still some things he does need to just iron out.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points. I would probably lean Bobby Klitman between the two just because the positional value that he brings, like you guys have both mentioned. Also, the fact that he's year 2 versus Chaz Lanier being year 1. And, I think there's just something to be said about that extra year advantage of being in a system, and I think with Bobby, I remember vividly, and Eric, I'm not sure if you remember this too. I remember being at open practice last year at Wayne State, and right before the action started, one of our guys in Pistons PR came up and tapped us on the shoulder and was like, "Hey, just a heads up, Bobby's got a calf thing, so he's not going to be playing today."
And they downplayed it crazy.
Yeah, I just remember it being like a small. It was presented to us as a small thing, so I was like, okay. Little did we know he was going to be out for like 3 months. Of action, and that's part of that. I think is just how fickle calf injuries are and how tricky those are. I also think there's something to be said about letting a guy come in slow, especially when it's a 2nd-round pick that you're not necessarily as invested in as far as like your overall future. It's kind of a, like not the end of the world if it doesn't hit, but I do think, like, to your point, I try not to read too much into Summer League, because last year when Bobby came out and played really well, everyone thought he was going to be a better player than Ron Holland. And obviously we saw from this last season just how untrue that was, right? And just how good and like how deceptive even Summer League can be. Just with Ron wasn't that great like in last year's Summer League, and came out and obviously had a great year, and then was freaking awesome at this year's Summer League. And it's determined to see if that actually translates to any level like that. But with Bobby, I think with his intangibles, there's still an NBA body there. And I if he can get some of those things figured out, like just with the mental IQ things and just like his anticipation, if he can improve that, I think he can overcome some of his athletic shortcomings. But I'm not necessarily betting on either cracking the rotation this season. I would just say if there's a likelihood of the two, you got to bet the guy who's 6'11" in a position where they just don't have much depth.
It's pretty bad when, you go scroll on Pistons Twitter, say we just drafted a 6'11" Killian Hayes because he won't shoot. Like that. I mean, that's how bad like the timeline and the discourse was this summer with him during Summer League.
This was a bad summer all around on the timeline. I ain't gonna hold you.
I'm telling you, man, it's been toxic.
Coming off a playoff bid, coming off a playoff bid, you would think that things would be a lot more crazy. Oh, it's Jaden Ivey war here, Asar war here. There's just, oh my goodness. To kind of piggyback off that a little bit, I feel like the front court is leaving a lot to be desired right now. I feel like if you look at a lot of the guys, like even from the starters, like from Duren, Asar, Beef Stew, like a lot of these guys are kind of not really, outside of Tobias and a little bit of Ron, offensively, they're leaving a lot to be desired right now. And they're very, very heavy in terms of what their backcourt depth is, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but you need some more, like, I think, quality around the front court, especially if they want to like have the ability to stretch and shoot and, you know, have some versatility. So I just don't think they have that right now. So yeah, in a break the glass situation, I think Bobby makes the most sense.
Yeah. If the 3-point shooting is really a struggle, I could see them breaking the glass on Chaz and in some like middle of the second quarter, or, you know, like end of the first situations where, you know, it like where you're really bringing out second unit guys. But I think the odds are both of those guys are going to be spending quite a bit of the season with the Crews, which that's not a bad thing. They need as many reps as they can get. So it's a great opportunity for both of them. Now,
what's up?
What's that, Anthony?
Oh, I was just gonna say, isn't it funny that Trajan loves wings and Troy loved bigs? Like, we had so much front court players, and now we don't.
Oh yeah.
Any. And Trajan's just like, I love shooting guards and small forwards, and I'm like, man, like, I wish we had some front court players.
I thought you said, is it for a second? And I was like, Anthony, I thought you like the G League. What's your name? I was like, dang. No, but it is really ironic. Like, if Trajan's a wingman, Troy's a big man.
That's still one of the funniest quotes ever. I love centers, and you just OD'd on the craziest centers.
Yeah, like,
they weren't even like different centers. They were all the same type of center. Like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah, just like, I like bigs very, very much. Bigs. And it's like, we know, Troy. We can tell.
We see, bro. Now, you got James Wiseman.
Mason Plumlee.
Hey, Plum Dog Millionaire, the GOAT. All right, now this last question, this is a little more lighthearted.
Okay.
More bleak of a future. The Washington Wizards, the Brooklyn Nets, or the Los Angeles Clippers? Because I think you can make a legitimate argument for all three. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the media day photos coming out of the Nets, but it's like Patrick coming home and looking at like, who are you people? And then the Washington Wizards, do I even need to say it? They're the Washington Wizards. I've never seen a group of basketball players walk back to their locker room like they just got out of a funeral more than I've seen that with the Washington Wizards in my time covering the league. And the Clippers, the everything Pablo Torre comes out. Every time Pablo Torre drops an episode of his podcast, it's like that George Bush whispering meme in Clippers Twitter. It's like, Pablo Torre just dropped another episode. No!
I mean, it's slim pickings. I mean, honestly, it's you got three organizations. I'd probably go Clippers.
Yeah.
Just because, like, at least Washington is trying. They brought in former OKC executives to come in. They're bringing in guys like Chris Middleton, who they traded for. They have CJ McCollum, so at least they have grown-ups in the locker room now. I still like Alex Sarr a lot. I like a lot of their draft picks. I really love Trey Jones. I think he's going to be really good. I think Washington does have a better direction. They're like back on the highway. For the longest time they were in the ditch. At least they're, getting back on track. But man, the Clippers are just, everyone's old. Like, you look at their core, it's like Nick Batum is like 45. Like, John Collins is your starting power forward. You brought back Chris Paul. Like, if you would have woke me up from a coma like 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, we're winning the championship. But like, that team would be lucky if they're like an 8 seed in the West. Like,
they got the 2013 All-Stars.
Literally.
Bradley Beal.
It's like that team is just so old, and like everyone's on cheap deals, so it makes you think like, are there more apple trees that are planted that we don't know about? But man, the whole Kawhi thing as well. I'm going Clippers, Sean. I'm going Clippers. It's not even close.
Yeah, Eric, if the PTFO stuff is true, and the NBA comes down with the hammer, the Clippers might not even be an organization by by the time this is all said and done. Bleak doesn't even feel like the right word to describe it.
Yeah, I was gonna go with Brooklyn, but I think you might have just sold me on it, man. I didn't like again. I didn't mind the John Collins acquisition. I was kind of interested with the Pistons, maybe, buzzing his phone and seeing what was up. But everything else outside of that, yeah, from James Harden to Chris Paul, like Kawhi, I don't even if he was healthy, they didn't have this thing hanging over their head. I don't know how many more great years he has left in him at this point. I'll still go with Brooklyn though. I don't know what they're doing right now. I hated their draft. Even the situation with Cam Thomas, it didn't seem like they were super interested in bringing him back. And they don't really have much to really build around. I was hoping that maybe a guy like Dylan Harper would land to them because that could be a focal point piece that they could have for the next 5 to 10 years. But they don't even have that at this point to build for their backcourt. I don't know what direction they have going on. And Michael Porter Jr., if anyone else puts a microphone in front of his face, I'm gonna go to a different sport. He has just been the most toxic person on the internet for no reason at all. And I don't think it's gonna serve him any better on the court. I don't think he's a primary guy you want to have shooting 20 times a game. And I'm terrified of what that's gonna look like for them. So I'll go with Brooklyn for now.
Yeah, I'm all out on Michael Porter Jr. I don't think I could believe in a player less. It's pretty impressive. I mean, It's like, I'm not gonna lie, guys. Like I cover basketball in a credentialed capacity, and I couldn't name one of these guys other than Danny Wolf if a gun was pointed to my head. I couldn't. Who the hell are you?
Oh, you know what I thought you were gonna pull up, Sean?
What's that?
I thought you were gonna pull up the 520 interview with Jeff Teague. I don't even think it was an interview. They heard Michael Porter talking on a podcast, and he said, "I was blessed with women." He said, "I was blessed with hoes." My brother was a degenerate gambler. I'm like, bro, like the way he said it with like conviction. He said it off the chest. Like, I'm like, bro, like, is this guy just like what?
He said, I was blessed with all these women. My brother wasn't lucky. He had his own demons he had to deal with. Like, Brad, why you kicking your brother's back? That's the funniest thing all summer.
Yeah, there was another one too. I saw like a day, like today or the other day, where it was about him splitting rent with his girlfriend, or his ex-girlfriend, like that. There's a lot of weird, like one where he shows people like girls clips of Andrew Tate to see how they respond, like just stuff that doesn't pass the vibe test at all. It's very weird, but all that pales in comparison to whatever could happen to the Clippers if Adam Silver is forced to bring down the hammer. It could be bad.
I feel like Michael Porter Jr. and Drake would be great friends.
I think they already are. I think they probably are boys. Yeah,
it's very possible.
What do you think happens first? Another Porter Jr. gets exiled from the league, or the Clippers have to relocate to Seattle?
Oh boy. I mean, I'm probably gonna go with Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
If he keeps talking.
Just hold this up to him. That's it. Ballmer can buy his way out of the situation somehow. All you need is
I think Adam Silver is doing everything he can to not have to really punish Steve Ballmer.
Right.
I think he'd be more than okay with kicking Michael Porter Jr. out if he had the chance.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, he's off to a good start, man. I mean, remember leaking his phone number when he was like a rookie with the Nuggets? Had to get a brand new phone number.
Oh man.
He's done so much. I went down the rabbit hole with him, and I'm like, I'm not going to repeat it on your podcast, Sean. Maybe we could talk about it off camera, but some of the stuff I found today, I'm like, holy.
The nutcase, dude.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, it's not great, but it's the fact that it's with the Clippers. It's well, there's this really massive allegation, and then with the Nets, it's Michael Porter Jr. just sucks as a dude. It's just kind of do. You know what I mean? Like the fact that that's like comparable ground. But guys, seriously, thank you both so much for being here and being on the pod. Be sure, and if you're listening, be sure you go and check out the work that Eric and Anthony are doing this season. They're going to be pumping out content as well, and they do absolutely phenomenal work. So they're going to be on the pod as well throughout the year, and in general, just appreciate these guys a ton. But be sure you like this video as well and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content we have. And thank you for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court, and be sure you subscribe.